Heyo and welcome to another episode of Pine Harbor County, where we will use and abuse the new operating district mechanic that was introduced in Cities Skylines 2. In the last episode, we finished off the downtown area at Bunyan's Rest with ample zoning, a small recreational area, and a unique building. So if you happen to miss that last episode, then be sure to click on the info card above, or if you're looking for a new Cities Skylines 2 series to binge watch, then check out the entire Pine Harbor County playlist located in the description below. Today celebrates our 50th episode of Pine Harbor County, and thus our 5th viewer-suggested video. So over in the channel's community tab, we have been collecting viewer-suggested builds and voting on our favorite 2. And the winners were a brewery and old farmhouse and a community cemetery inspired by the Arlington National Cemetery outside of Washington, D.C. So a special thank you to everyone who provided ideas for this viewer-suggested special, and also a special thank you to everyone who voted over in the community tab. So today we are going to tackle those viewer-suggested builds. So grab your caffeinated beverage of choice and let's get ready to jump right on into today's build. So the first idea came from Neil back during episode 42, where he suggested a brewery. Originally, when he and I were chatting about this, we were discussing what we should build on the west side of the Artilio Road that runs from Bayburn to Pinecrest Junction. But I think after looking at the space we have to work with, I'm actually going to build this a little bit closer to the school campus in Ashton, because I want to place another build later in this episode in Alders Bend, closer to the cemeteries in Woodbine. Now, as a big foodie and lover of craft beers, ciders, meads, and what have yous, I naturally adored this idea, and I think Neil perfected this idea by thinking up a cider brewery that fell on hard times, perhaps after failing to overcome their larger farming competitors in Brayburn. It has since been bought and revitalized as a craft brewery featuring apple ciders from the locally grown apple orchard, stores and prepared everything right there on the property. And to take the idea even further, let's make this brewery also a wedding venue, as that is actually something I see a bit in my area. One town over from where I actually live is a winery that actually also hosts weddings. And what this venue kind of does is it rents out the restaurant and dining area for weddings, and when the weddings are not booked, it is a full functioning restaurant, bar, and winery. So let's start the build with the signature building, and I'm going to choose the Pop Musician's House from the European set because the aesthetics of this venue give me a waterfront restaurant taste testing area vibe. It also, I think, plays in nicely with the wedding venue sub-idea local to my area. When patrons aren't tasting the cider and eating the food, then it serves as the main building for when the brewery is hosting a wedding. Obviously, this is a residential building, not a commercial building, so it won't generate commercial income for Pine Harbor County, but I do think it just kind of works perfectly for the brewery that we are going for, and honestly, I can't resist. So let's plop in this asset and connect in some parking and roads for the building. Next, we need to start a production line of sorts for the brewery, starting with the resource. Since this brewery serves ciders made from apples, it makes sense then to create an apple orchard. So that is what we're going to do next. So let's grab our line tool and apple trees and stretch a large orchard up the hillside a bit so the apples are overlooking the brewery. right, next in our quasi-production line would be warehouses and perhaps a bigger brewing house. So I'm gonna come in here and get some very specific industrial warehouses and a single manufacturing building in. While I would like to be super picky and have the manufacturing building produce beverages, I don't think we'll be able to play that long of a game of Whack the Growable today. But I wanna at least give this a try and come under an industry here and see if we can subsidize it a little bit, just for a little bit of time. Yeah, what the heck, we'll go all out. Just to see what happens, see if we can't get this specific manufacturing building in. So let's come on in here and kind of see how it came out. I did try with the taxes to, subsidize and encourage beverages to, spawn. It didn't work. So we ended up with the petrochemicals. We're just going to pretend that actually says beverages. And a couple of other really nice, asset warehouse looking assets. I'm a little worried this one might end up upgrading to having a smokestack, but I can kind of monitor that on our own. And if I have to, I'll play a little bit more Whack the Growables off camera here. And now I want to enjoy some of those industrial props that we got and jump into a beautifying the build time lapse to detail the build and around it a little bit. Alright, next let's make a prop-filled promenade where wedding goers can enjoy a waterfront ceremony and cider drinkers could enjoy the crisp bay air. I plan on doing this in a few stages, starting with some landscaping, then a pedestrian key road, so we can get that nice wall and railing, and after that I will fill in the surface with some surface painter and some props. So let's start with the landscaping by just pulling out some of the terrain levels here so that they're above the sea level for the most part and giving us just a little bit more space to work with. Now let's create a nice shape with the pedestrian roads, and I'm feeling something a little more rounded today, perhaps with a little bit of an inlet and an elevated road over some water. I would love to make that elevated road a bridge, but the pedestrian road doesn't have a bridge version, and I think a 2-lane road wouldn't really fit in this area, but I'm gonna kind of see what happens. I really wanted to kind of put an arch on that bridge as well. However, at this time, we cannot put props on the roads unless you enable anarchy. And again, a couple episodes ago, I mentioned that I installed anarchy, but I only installed it so I could deal with bulldozing conflicts. So I'm not gonna do it. So let's jump on in and get a nice little area here for some afternoon drinking along the Inner Bay area and some weddings. Awesome, so I really think this area is beginning to come together nicely. Let's finish off this area with a beautifying the build time lapse and get a pedestrian path down here. Well, I was thinking of getting more pedestrian paths down here, but I think actually I might leave it as is. But I do want to get some guarding, some seating, a ceremony arch in this area. Probably right here is where I kind of pictured the ceremony to be. So yeah, let's just jump into a beautifying the build time lapse and see where our whims take us today. Guys, what do you think? Do you think we did a good job capturing the idea? I think it came out pretty good. I would have been happier if I could have picked more specific industrial zoning here. But I like how the pop musician comes in. I love how the apple orchards look. This was actually a design I had kind of actually messed around with. I think actually it's in the Port Carcosa episodes where we did a lemon factory and made some extra orchards in this method. So I really like doing that. It's nice having the surface painter. Wouldn't mind learning how to make this look a little bit more natural, but I will figure that out. I also like how we made this little promenade. It's not anything particularly fancy, but honestly, I think it'd be kind of a fun spot to get married. I had a little bit difficulty putting as much flora as I had wanted down here. Originally, I kind of wanted to just get two semicircles of bushes to kind of make this more private to the promenade area, but there's some water conflicts here and I think this would work. Besides, you wouldn't have anyone randomly walking down here in the middle of a wedding, just those who are actually attending the wedding. And the bushes to me would be for privacy. Moving back into this area, what I did is just a little simple seating area. One of my favorite wineries is actually down in the Finger Lake area of New York, so upstate New York. And something I love is that you can sit out on the porch, taste some wine, and just look over Cayuga Lake. It's beautiful. So that's kind of what I was trying to emulate here. I put the heat lamps in because that would get obviously very, very cold in winter. And I repurposed the greenhouse to act as like a quasi drink refill station, I guess. You know, maybe they have just a few select tabs on hand, a small register inside this greenhouse, and you could do some taste testing out here if you do not want to come to the restaurant proper. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Is there any suggestions you have for this build or any critiques? I do like critiques, so please let me know what your thoughts are. Now let's work on our second place winner, a Arlington National Cemetery inspired build. For those who don't know, the Arlington National Cemetery is one of the largest national cemeteries in the USA. It's owned by the US Armed Forces, and soldiers who die in active duty are actually eligible to be buried here, amongst, honestly, an entire Wikipedia page of cool facts that I encourage you to go check out and read. So I'm hoping to create something similar now that we have some additional props to play with, and before we begin to play with those props, I actually want to come in and add in some of the actual graveyard assets. So we have a bit of game functionality and hearses driving in and out of the area. So let's start by fusing in a few cemetery assets here and trying to create just a basic but sort of unique design, I guess, with those cemetery assets. Alright, so part of the reason I chose this area is because I think if we are clever with our future episodes and our pedestrian paths, We can generate some nice pedestrian activity through this area by connecting Arlders Bend and Woodbine. Thus, I want to try adding in some paths first to add gardens and tombstone decorations around. So let's jump on in, get some pedestrian roads in and some pedestrian paths so that we're kind of multitasking the road need with pedestrian connectivity. Alright, now let's get some of the gravestone and tombstones in and add our own flair to the cemeteries beyond just the standard assets. I am going to time-lapse this as it's, it's kind of actually a fairly large area for the props, and I'm unsure if I want to use the line tool or not, or if I want to place each one down individually. Mainly, I just want to make sure that the gravestones have variation amongst the different props. So let's jump on in and decorate this area up a little bit. right. I definitely just feared for a prop limit. Like, I kept waiting for that to pop out. Really glad it didn't. So let's kind of recap this a little bit. And obviously you saw that I did actually end up choosing to pick one of the gravestones and just kind of spam it in the line tool. I'm really grateful that I did use line tool, because that we would have been here all day placing those down individually. And I chose the same grave tombstone because when I was looking at a picture of Arlington National Cemetery, for the most part, a lot of their gravestones are very standard as well. Maybe a little height difference, a little bit more, curve at the top, but pretty standard. So back when we were putting in the pedestrian roads, I did make a bridge here. I figured this can act as a memorial bridge, somebody very special in Pine Harbor County getting their own bridge, or maybe survivors of a certain pandemic, or something like that. And then we did just come through and get some surface painter in so that it stays green during the winter months. And yeah, I kind of just really like how it came out here. I did add one crematorium, not necessarily for the storage capacity, but more because Arlington has this little amphitheater. Obviously, this isn't an amphitheater. It's a honestly really gorgeous crematorium. Like, I kind of just wish I could just pick this up on its own and make a little death complex out of that, because I just really like how this is. Like, I've never really zoomed quite so into it, and yeah, that's a very nice looking X-set. So yeah, let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Do you think Obviously we have so many gravestones. But do you think it came out good? Do you think we really captured that image of the Arlington National Cemetery? Let me know down in the comments, okay? Alrighty, everyone, I think that just about wraps up today's episode. If you enjoyed, please be sure to hit that like button below. And if you are looking for a new Cities Skylines 2 series to binge watch, then be sure to check out the entire Pine Harbor County playlist located in the description below. Next week, I'd like to work on filling in the green space in North Bunyan's Rest across from Pinecrest Junction, so be sure to tune in. Until next time, I hope everyone has a phenomenal week.